Hello, everybody. Tracy, Mrs. JDog Flanagan with you here today. I'm the co-founder and senior vice president here at JDog Brands. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Tactical Treasures, powered by the JDog Foundation. Our podcast gives veterans, male spouses, active military members, and military family members a voice in the veteran space to speak about their service, how they're affecting their communities post-service, and they share with me a tactical treasure that has shaped their journey in their military career, business, or life. Today, I am so excited to have with me Clifford Bauman, who is a retired Army CW4, having served for 34 years. His military career included working at U.S. Army Accessions Command, Deputy Commanding General Initial Military Training Center of Excellence, and Army National Guard Bureau Aviation Logistics Division. He deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. His military awards and decorations include the Soldier's Medal for actions that saved 3 sailors' lives after an accident on the Chesapeake Bay, as well as Legion of Merit, Meritorious Service Medal, and an Army Commendation Medal. Currently, Cliff is an internationally known motivational speaker and author talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health, and suicide. As a survivor of an attempted suicide, he realizes the importance of getting counseling and having a strong support structure. After being diagnosed with PTSD from 18 hours as a first responder to the Pentagon during the September 11, 2001 terror attack, he initially dealt with his condition on his own. Cliff saw that was not working, and he sought treatment, which changed his life around. He now believes that counseling has made him a stronger man and a stronger soldier. He has published articles in USA Today, Army, Navy, Marine, and Air Force Times, GX Magazine, Newsliner, National Guard Association Magazine, the Huffington Post, and Rally Point. Cliff also hosts his own podcast, The Mental Health Warrior, on the Veteran Trash Talk Network, and a radio show on Reach Across America Radio. Cliff's story is also featured in the book Mental Health Warrior, A True Story of Suicide and Survival Post 9/11, written by William D. Kammerer, PhD. Hello, Cliff. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Tracy. Thanks for having me. That was a big mouthful. I guess that and $5 you can get a coffee at Starbucks.
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, we got through it. It was awesome. What an amazing bio, sir.
Yeah.
Really. Thank you so much for your service to our country. And I would love to know what inspired and led you to join the Army.
Actually, it was my older brother. He was 4 years older than me, and we always had a competition going on. And Chris actually joined when I was, I think he was out of school, so I was a freshman in high school. And then 2 years later, when I became a junior in high school, I joined. Actually, was in the same unit, and
Wow.
we always had that competitive nature. We were wrestlers. We played football, and so if he did something in the sport, then I had to do something in the sport. And so we were laughing the other day because I broke every one of his wrestling records except for one, and that was the fastest spin. So,
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. So is there a particular aspect, from your service that stood out as especially impactful in a positive way for you?
well, I think just in service in general, it just had a positive impact on my life. When I joined, I was kind of I wouldn't say rambunctious, but I was going down the wrong path. Had been in some fights and put a kid in the hospital and did some things that,
Wow.
just being 17, small town and was, you come to that crossroad, right? And my brother talked to me, and I decided to go ahead and join the Guard and the Army National Guard, and that really kind of taken me out of that environment when I went to basic training between my junior and senior year. Really changed how I looked at things and how I was doing with my life at that time. Even though I was only 17, I knew I had to make a change because it wasn't going to go anywhere good.
Right, right. Yeah. That's awesome. So you're a motivational speaker,
Mm-hmm.
author, and podcast host. Talk to me about the Mental Health Warrior podcast. How did that come about, and what's the premise behind it?
Well, as you know, I'm a suicide survivor. That's my whole story is detailed in my book about what I did on 9/11, and then my subsequent suicide attempt, and then years later, actually being the only active duty officer back in 2012 that publicly spoke about mental health in my suicide attempt. When I decided to retire after turning down promotion to W5, it was back in 2021. I actually went on the Veterans Trash Talk Network to talk about my book and other things that I was doing. And after it was over with, Nick just, the founder, called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing a podcast?" And I had never even thought I had never even thought about it, never entered my mind. And I said, "Yeah, sure." So we kicked it off that year. I'm in my third season of the Mental Health Warrior, and I was just trying to kind of think of a name. And a good friend of mine, Danae, who runs NAMI out of Brown County, Ohio, always talked about people being mental health warriors. And so I asked her if it's okay if I use that for my podcast. And she said, sure. And that's kind of how the Mental Health Warrior was born. And then on the day of my suicide attempt in December 22nd is when I aired my first podcast. And so I was super excited about that. And, I think talking about mental health, talking about stigma has changed a whole lot, even since I retired 2 years ago, but it still needs to continue, right? Because too many veterans, too many young people are taking their lives, and it's just so sad. And so, what I try to do with my podcast is really, I talk about all kinds of things. I address things that affect the family. I address things that affect service members. I talk about things that doesn't even affect anybody that's never been related to the service, because it's important. Because it's going to reach out to somebody. 6 degrees of separation, right? And I just think
Right.
it's just so important to talk about things, and along with my podcast, I do a mental health break or a mental health minute. I used to call it a mental health minute. I've now called it a mental health break that I post every day. And that theme is different for every week. I come up with a new theme to talk about because it is so important.
Right, right. So on your podcast, do you have guests that come on and
Mhm.
offer, insight and information, or is it just you?
No, I have I just brought back on a co-host, Lynn. We do have guests comes on the show periodically. I had one guest come on a couple of times. Her name is Linda Diaz. She's a good close friend of mine. She created Lauren's Law after tragically her daughter completed suicide at age 15. She's come on and talked about, obviously the issues that these younger generations are having. And then I've had professionals. I had the founder of EarKick. I don't know if you ever heard of EarKick. It sounds just like I just said, EARKICK. It's probably the best mental health app, and they don't pay me or anything, but I use it every single day. It's the best mental health app that's free that I've ever came across. And the AI behind it, they were way in front of AI before anybody else was using it. But it's amazing. And
Wow.
so you download the app on your Android or iPhone, and you have a little
Hmm.
panda bear. You can rename the panda if you want. And you just use emojis. You type, you voice text. A child can use it. An older person can use it. And you just type what's going on. And it tracks the weather. It tracks your moods. It tracks all kinds. You're the only one that sees it. Nobody else sees it but yourself.
Okay.
But what I like about it is because it tracks weather patterns and things like that, you could say, well, I always seem to be, this past February, I was not in a bad mood. Well, you can go back and look at it. And maybe this past February, you had less days of sunshine or more days of bad weather or something. And so it really gives you things that you can use to help you to improve your mental health. Along with that, they have little videos and music and things that you can listen to help with anxiety, to help with all kinds of stuff. And so it's a very interactive app. And like I said, I use it every single day, and I constantly talk about it because I think whether you're a young person, preteen, teenager, whatever, or if you're an older person, it's really nice. And one update that they've just done to the app is now you can have a one-on-one conversation with the panda, and so it's just like a person
Oh,
being with you.
wow.
The panda
So the
talks to
panda
you.
actually talks to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Based
And
based on what you input into
mm-hmm.
the app.
Yep. So
Wow.
this is what the panda looks like.
Oh, wow.
And so
Okay.
it comes up, and I can go through my whole record of what I did, and then if you want to listen to music, you click the button here that says "Listen to Music," and it has all kinds of different types of music on there. And then they have different
Okay.
videos. But then if you look at, I'll just go over this real quick. Let's see here. Let me go back a little bit farther here.
And this is called Ear Kick.
Ear,
EAR Kick.
yep,
Okay.
KICK, all one word. And so if you look here, this is the past year of my mood chart. And so I can go through here and look at all the different things and
Oh
the
wow.
temperature trends and stuff, and it goes through even my anxiety levels. It tracks those, and I can see the same graphs on those. Uh,
Wow. That's
and
amazing.
and what's nice about it is that when you enter something into it, you can just choose emojis. You don't even have to type anything. You just pick different emojis.
Right.
But let's say you went in and you were having a particularly bad day. Something happened, maybe a car accident, or maybe you just had a bad day at work. Right? The panda will remember that, and the following day when you enter it, it'll ask you, and then it'll give you some helpful tips how to improve your mental health. And then when you do use it, and I'll show you this real quick because this popped up the other day. Um, when you fill out your daily thing, sometimes it gives you a fortune cookie, and then you open up the fortune cookie, and it has a little saying in it, and so it just gives you a nice little saying. And I usually post those on my social media when it pops up because it's just something nice. And something else, is along with Ear Kick, I'm a big gamer, right? I have a PS5. My whole family has played video game their whole life.
Right.
And the other day, I was playing Destiny, and that's a game I like to play. And we were flipping in between screens. I'm going to show this real quick. See that? And then I'm going to zoom in on what it said. On the game, out of the blue, it came up with a mental health statement. And it says if
Oh
you're having
wow.
issues or problems, you can go to Bungie.com and get help. You don't have to suffer alone. I just thought that was kind of cool. And so I
That
say all
is.
that to say this. Sometimes social media gets a bad rep, but also just like with anything, it can be used for good. I'm an
Mm,
older guy, but I'm very tech savvy, and I've always believed in one thing about social media is it allows you to reach out and touch more people, but also it allows somebody doesn't need to suffer in silence. You can go onto Facebook, you can go to Instagram, Twitter, whatever social media platform you use, and you can
right.
find somebody out there to talk to.
Wow. Wow, that's really neat. I'm gonna have to keep that. I know somebody who might benefit from that app. Thank you for sharing that. That's really
Airkick is
amazing.
just—it's an amazing app. Matter of fact, I'm living now in Italy. My wife got still active duty Navy. She got
Oh
stationed
wow.
in Italy last September. I moved out here in December. So they're from Switzerland. Actually, the people that made it, Airkicks comes out of Switzerland, and I'm gonna try to make it up there and go there and see them. She's just such a nice lady, and it's the app is just really starting to grow. But it's amazing what they've been able to do and how it's had a positive influence on the younger generation too.
Sure.
It's just good.
Sure. Yeah. And when you think about it, an app with the panda and all that sort of thing, to be honest, I'm sure that that is something that speaks to the younger generation
Yeah.
because they're very techy and,
Hmm.
all into all that app stuff and everything. So, wow, that's
Well,
amazing.
for kids, right? When they can be journaling in their room and they can be doing other stuff, but it gives them something other than being by themselves. And even though it's an AI person, like I always say, just because it's different than the way I was grew up or the way I think, way I do
Sure.
stuff, doesn't make it less. I talked about this all the time in the military as an officer is as a leader, you have to learn how to communicate with the people you lead. And each generation, that communication changes, and you have to be able to communicate on a level
Right.
that they understand. And the same thing with the younger kids. People talk about, oh, well, they just text, so they just do that. But that's how they communicate. And so you need to
Yeah,
understand
true.
that.
Hello, viewers and listeners. I would like to introduce you to the JDog Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the prevention of veteran suicide and the healing of veterans' mental health. 100% of all proceeds received by the JDog Foundation goes directly to several foundations focused on the mission of saving veterans' lives. Each partner is hand-selected by our executive director, Jerry Flanagan, with input from the assistant director, Tracy Flanagan, and the JDog Foundation board members. Our foundation's motto: saving lives, one veteran at a time. Go to jdogfoundation.org to take a look at everything that we're doing there and the organizations that we're partnered with. You can also donate, and there's also a support line if you're in need of help. Thanks. Check us out, jdogfoundation.org.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I agree with you wholeheartedly. Every generation is different of how they communicate and receive information, you know. Your book, The Mental Health Warrior, what inspired you to, you know, kind of tell your story and have a book written?
Yeah, it's
I think
that's
it's amazing.
I did I am an internationally known motivational speaker, and I travel all around the world doing speaking events. And I was in 2017. I was attached to Department of the Army Inspecting General, the DAIG, and I met Bill Doc K, that we call him, who wrote the book, and we just became friends. And he's a forensic psychologist, and we were in Hawaii one night. We were just sitting around drinking, and it was his birthday, and so I bought some bourbon, and we were sitting there celebrating his birthday. We just had a drink or two, and he's like, you know what, we should write a book. We should write a book about your stories. And it took a couple of years. And I tell you what, Bill, we decided to do it. We went in it to 50-50. And he did a year of, investigations. He went out and talked to people that I had associated with during 9/11. He kind of furthered the story a little bit more. When I did the boat rescue back in 2009 and saved 3 out of the 4 fishermen, he went and made contact to the people that were still around, and got their feedback. And so he really put in a lot of detail into the book about my different stories. But I say this all the time: my life isn't so great that it isn't anybody else's. Everybody has a story to tell. And,
Sure.
I think when you go and tell that story, it resonates a lot. And one good thing we did in the book too is there's also a lot of self-help tips, and a lot of things that maybe if you're having issues and problems, you can say, oh, well, Cliff seems like a pretty cool guy, kind of a laughing guy, a cool guy to hang out with, and he went through some crap, but he made it out of it okay. So maybe I can make it out of it okay too.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
But
That's really amazing.
it's amazing with the book, and I don't know if anybody's out there. Of course, this is a book, and I'm sure you guys will see pictures of it. But the different publishers out there, and so if you're thinking about writing a book, I'm going to say this real quick because it's important. And something that Bill and I learned in the process. Of course, you have the big publishers. If your book's good enough, if your story fits in with their timeline. We had some offers for some big publishers, but we turned them down because you lose the intellectual properties or the copyrights to that book. They control
Uh,
everything, and so they can change your
ah,
story. They can mix it up. You don't make as much money per book. And then they have another type of publisher called a hybrid publisher. And what a hybrid publisher is that you cover all the costs to publish the book, you maintain copyrights, and they kind of take you through the steps to get the book published. They handle all the printing. They handle, they have experts that help with, they help with the cover design, with the type of paper,
mhm,
all that stuff, right? But you pay the cost
right.
up front. But
Yeah.
if you look inside this book, it says it's copyrighted by Bill and I, so we own it. So no changes could happen to this book unless we agree to it, because we went with a hybrid publisher. And of
Right.
course, the last one you can go with is self-publishing. And one thing with the hybrid publisher, they put it's on Barnes and Noble, it's on Amazon,
Hmm.
anywhere where you buy books. The publisher Amplify is the name of the publishing company. They took care of all that for us, and then they
Right.
handle all the sales and all that stuff. Of course, I sell the book through my website also. If you buy it through my website at cliffordbauman.com, I will sign it and ship it to you. It takes a little bit longer now. I'm in Italy, but it's an APO address, so I can still get it out to you. It just takes a little bit longer, but
Yeah.
the book's still available. So if you're out there and if you're writing a book or thinking about writing a book, I know Amplify was very easy to work with, and they do have writers that can assist you in getting that book written and getting that book out. Because sometimes it's important to tell your story. You
Sure.
know,
Yeah. You never know when you're going to touch somebody who
that's true. You
picks
never
up
do.
that book and purchase it. You know, you never know. Um, that's amazing. So, Cliff, I would love to hear about your tactical treasure. Do you have one? And I can't wait to hear what it is.
I was thinking about this, and I don't know if it's going to fall into the same arena, but here's the thing that I brought, and that I try to resonate with people, and I want everybody to think about this. The Army teaches you how to be resilient, right? The Army teaches you all kinds of things. I was in the Army for a very long time.
Right.
But what they don't teach you about is when you get out and you're no longer in that environment, how to adjust to things, right? And how to see things differently. And one thing that I had to teach myself is to learn new things. And so I think for one thing I do with my podcast, do that mental health minutes and stuff, and I talk about this is just three aspects. You need to work on your physical, your mental, and your spirituality, however you define that. And those are so very important. And if you can just do that a little bit each day, your life would be so much better. And just know that some days are great, some days are bad. You may have multiple days that are bad, but eventually they'll get good, because I know what that is. I know what that road looks like. I was a guy that if you told me September of 2001, by the end of September of 2002, I was going to attempt my life, and almost succeeded in attempting my life, I would say no way. That's never going to happen. But it did happen.
It
And
did.
I
Yeah.
think for people, no matter what age you are, you can always learn new things. You can always do things differently. And if that path you've been looking down has always stayed the same, go down a different path. Quit going down the same path, because you know what the end result is. Make yourself uncomfortable every now and then, because when you're uncomfortable, that's when you open up for healing. And sometimes we get too comfortable in our ways. So I don't know if that's really what you were looking for, but that's really kind of what I
Yeah.
was thinking about, because I think it's just so important, especially
Sure.
as we get older, that, it's just important to look at things differently, and do things, kind of like we did in the military when we were in.
Right. Right. And I mean, I've heard that so often. I mean, I've spoken with, I think I've had over 100 guests on my podcast, and the one thing that seems to resonate, especially, if you go in and spend so many years like you yourself did
Mhm.
in the military, you went in right after high school or as a junior in high school,
Yeah.
and you get out, and you don't know how to be a civilian because you
You
never
don't.
were a civilian adult. So
Yeah.
it's a whole new, I think, learning process.
It takes
That
about a year or
that
two to adjust to it.
Yeah,
It really does.
yeah.
You really need to give yourself a good year or two to adjust. Uh, Here's the thing. Sorry to interrupt you, but if I
No,
don't say, I'll lose my
fine.
train. In the military, when you would go TDY, when you would travel, right? You'd go there on Monday and you'd be back by Friday. Well, when I travel and do speaking events, let's say, if I go to Cree or something like that, I don't have to rush back. I can stay there. I can travel around. I can look. It took me almost a year and a half to adjust my travel to where I would just take a couple of days for myself and enjoy whatever area that I was in, because I was so trained in the military. Get there, get the mission done, get back home. I,
Right.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I had to learn to take time for myself, as silly as that sounds. And
Right.
even still today, I struggle with that some.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah, I know. It's definitely ingrained in you. I know your treasure was kind of like a motto and a piece of advice, but do you have any advice for fellow veterans that are struggling with suicide ideologies and PTSD?
Yeah, and this is what I'm going to tell you. I've been that person sitting in that dark room. I get goosebumps right now when I'm saying this. I know what it's like to be in that room. I know what it's like to not want to see the sunshine. I know what it's like not to want to see the night. I get it. Brothers and sisters, I've been there. I've been as close to succeeding with actual not succeeding that you can get, because my brother saved my life. My older brother saved my life. But here's what I'm going to say. Even if you don't think so, I guarantee you there's somebody out there that loves you. There's somebody out there that cares for you. And there's somebody that wants you here tomorrow. So please pick up that phone. don't be like me because I didn't call nobody. My brother got a funny feeling at work and called his house, and I didn't answer, and he came home, found me unconscious. I wasn't brave enough to call somebody. But you know what? I'm going to say this to you, something else too. With all the iPhones nowadays, a lot of people will put their phone on silence at a certain time. And so if you have somebody in your mind that you're going to call when you're in crisis, please have that conversation with them, because unfortunately there has been cases where I've had friends who had the phone on silent and somebody called them and the phone didn't ring, and that person took that as a sign. Don't take that as a sign.
Yeah.
Call that person back 3 times in a row and then it'll ring through. But have that adult conversation with them, so then they can put you on the special list to where if you do call at 2:00 in the morning, it'll ring and they'll be able to pick it up. So my advice to you is, even if you don't think you're loved, even if you don't think somebody's out there is thinking about you, I guarantee you there's somebody is. And just give them one more chance. What are you going to lose? You're not going to lose anything.
Right. That's great advice. Yeah, and also too, I'm sure that you don't think of the people, when you're in crisis, it's hard to think of the people that you're going to leave behind, that are going to be so sad if you're no longer here.
They say roughly every 42 seconds somebody completes suicide. Every 43 seconds for the rest of their life, somebody wonders if they could do something different or could have done something different.
Right. Well said. Great advice. Thank you. So before you go, this has been such an amazing conversation, Cliff. I really appreciate your time and also just being so vulnerable to share your story. And hopefully, there's somebody who may need to hear, everything that you said today. And if you've touched one person, right?
It was all worth it, right?
It
So I
was
tell
all
people
worth
all the
it.
time, the little bit of pain that I go through when I go out and do my speaking events, even writing a book. I mean, put your life out there in a book and you don't have people go read it. It's a lot.
It is.
But if I can save one life, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It was worth it, because I don't want anybody to go down the road that I went down. That was an ugly, nasty, horrible road, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Right. Where can people find and connect with you? Where can they find out more information on the podcast, purchase your book you to speak?
Yeah, it's super easy. You can go out to my website at cliffordbauman.com. I have links to all my podcasts, all the different campaigns and projects I work on. I just, last year I did a campaign for the Brady Foundation on gun control and gun violence. I was very happy to be part of that. And, you can see my documentary out there that the Able channel filmed on me that just won some awards. And so all the links out there on my website, the links to my books to my website, but it's super easy, just cliffordbauman.com. And the same thing for social media. You just search for Clifford Bauman and you'll be able to find me super easy.
Okay, that's great. That is easy. I like the website. It's a one-stop shop. That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Again, Cliff, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate having you on. This has been just an awesome discussion, enlightening. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom and advice.
Well, and I want to say thank you, Tracy and Tactical Treasures, for what you guys do and helping bring the stories to veterans and others out there, because it is important. And people listen to all kinds of different things, and the more times and different people we can talk to and different ways we can show stuff, it's just undoubtedly going to help more people out there.
Right. So true. Okay. Well, sir, thank you so much. Coming all the way from Italy to us. I appreciate it.
It's 21:32 here. It's 9:30 at night, so we're about 6 hours ahead. So
okay, well, it's 3:30 in the afternoon here in Pennsylvania, United States. Thank you, sir. Take care.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Hello, viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Tactical Treasures Podcast. We've just finished up an amazing conversation with Clifford Bauman, who is a retired Army CW4, having served for 34 years. He is now a motivational speaker, an author, and a podcast host of The Mental Health Warrior. In the book, Mental Health Warrior, A True Story of Suicide and Survival Post 9/11, we meet Cliff Bauman, a volunteer emergency responder dispatched to the Pentagon on September 11th. His subsequent battles with PTSD, survivor's grief, and suicide are at the heart of this moving chronicle, which also speaks to the wider, evolving crisis of mental health in a post 9/11 world. In this true story of resilience and courage in the face of devastation, Cliff's narrative reminds us of the human cost of terrorism, our ability to overcome adversity, and the way that therapy, psychology, and group support have the power to change lives for the better. To learn more about Cliff Bauman, to invite Cliff to speak at your event, and to purchase his book, The Mental Health Warrior, go to Clifford Bauman, and that's BAUMAN.com. Don't forget to check out his podcast, The Mental Health Warrior, on Reach Across America Radio, Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern and Sundays at 10 p.m. Eastern. Again, thanks for joining us. Don't forget you can find your Tactical Treasures podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, as well as American Grit and Vet TV. We are now airing on Reach Across America Radio on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern and Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can also find Reach Across America Radio on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app. And we are also proud to share that our JDog Foundation is a Reach Across America sponsorship group. For each $17 Veterans Reach that you sponsor, $5 goes directly back to our JDog Foundation, whose mission is to prevent veteran suicide and heal veterans' mental health and PTSD. You can donate right now at reachacrossamerica.org/JDog. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on another podcast again real soon. Bye-bye now.